Hi, this is Bruce, and I chose to code a Pomodoro clock. If you're not familiar with it, the Pomodoro technique is a popular time management system where you work for 25 minutes straight with 5-minute breaks in between. Here is the domain analysis. On the left, the clock has just started in focus mode at 25 minutes and it's in red with a focus as the text label. In the center, the clock is counted down to 0. It's still in focus mode. But 1 second later, on the right, it is in break mode, starting the countdown at 5 minutes with the break label, and it's in blue. The constants are the width and height of the canvas, the MTS, empty scene, which is the canvas itself, the font size, the focus font color, which is red, the break font color, which is blue, the focus start minutes at 25 minutes, the break start minutes, which is at 5 minutes, the focus label, the text, which is the word focus, and the break label, which is break, the clock X and Y position, and the label X and Y position. The things that are changing here are the minutes and the seconds and the mode being whether it's in focus mode or break mode. And the big bang options are on tick, to draw, and on key because it's going to switch between the two clocks also when you press the space bar.
I pasted in the world program template. Now it's time to do the constants. I've done define width at 150 pixels. I defined the height at 150 pixels. The MTS or empty scene is an empty scene that's width wide and height high. Define the font size at 48. And the focus font color, that's the red color. And define the break font color, that's blue. Define the focus start minutes, and in this case we have it start at 25 minutes. Define the break start minutes, how long you take a break, and that'll be at 5 minutes. Define the focus label, which we quote focus, the string focus, and the break label is the string break. And the exposition of time, I'm defining in terms of the width, which is the width divided by 2. The Y position, I'm defining in terms of the height, and I'm multiplying the height times 0.7. Likewise, the labels are the width position divided by 2, and the Y position of the labels will be the height position times 0.3. And it recommends here giving it the program a better name, so we'll call it the Pomodoro clock. Now it's time to move on to the data definition. And the changing items, the world state, are the minutes, the seconds, and the mode, whether it's in the focus or the break mode. So we do define struct clock, and then min for minutes, sec for seconds, and the mode. The type definition is clock is a make clock natural Boolean, and the interpretation is the minutes and seconds remaining, and the focus mode or the break mode, and since it's a Boolean, we'll just call the focus mode true. The break mode will be false. Come up with a couple of definitions. Define C1, make clock 25, 0, true. That's a focus clock that starts at 25 minutes, and it's focus because it's true. Define C2, make clock 4:30, false. That's one of the break clocks at 4 minutes and 30 seconds left. Define fun for clock. Working on the template now, and the template rules used are it's compound, and there are 3 fields. So the rule is you have to use all of the selectors, So paren dot dot dot, and then we do each of the selectors. So we do clock min C, which is a natural. We do clock seconds and C, that's a natural. And clock mode C, and that's a Boolean. And we run it to see if it's a problem. I got a spelling error there, and I forgot a paren. Let's go ahead and run it again. It appears to be well formed.
Next, I need to clean up the template a little bit. Right now, the type is being shown as WS. We'll change that to clock using the search and replace function on Racket. And in the case of lowercase ws, I'll just change that to C because they're parameters. That's done. Forgot to rename clock as a Pomodoro clock. And my interpretation was a little confusing. I want to say that if the mode is true, then it's in focus mode, and otherwise in false, it's in the break mode. So rename onTick as next clock and toDraw as render. I don't need the stop when or the any mouse controls on this, and I'll leave on key later when I want to do the function that applies to that.
I'll also say to start the world with main make clock 25:0 true. And I'll clean up the functions a little bit, have them produce clocks, run it. Everything appears to be well formed so far. Now we're moving on to the function next clock, which the signature is clock produces clock, and it produces the next clock. So we'll go on to the examples. Check expect next clock. It takes a clock, so we'll make a clock 12:30 true, and when 1 second goes by, we're going to want that to be make clock 12:29 true. The next check expect is next clock make clock 4:30 and false, and the difference in the mode shouldn't make any difference, so it should be make clock 4:29 minus 1 second, that is, and false. But what happens when the seconds are at 0? Well, if there's still some minutes left, let's say there's 10 minutes, 10:0 true, the 10 will become 9, the 0 will become 59. So it would be make clock 9:59 true. 10 becomes 9:59, 5 becomes 4:59, and so on. But then what happens when both the minutes and the clock and the seconds are at 0? Well, you make clock 00 true. What you're going to want to have as a result would be make clock 5. That's where the break start clock's 0 for seconds, and it'll change the mode to false. And likewise, if you have another check expect, which begins false, then it would go over to true, and it would start at 25 minutes. As a matter of fact, let's do that check expect. So we do check expect, make clock 00 false, and the result will be a make clock 25 minutes because that's where the focus clock starts, 0 and true. And as it says there, the break clock reaches 0, converts to focus. We run that, and there are errors, but everything appears to be well formed.
Errors, that way at least. So I will copy the template down. By the way, this template gets used, I think, 7 or 8 times. Shows you one of the values of being able to resort to the same template over and over again. And I'll comment out the stub. And I need to rename the function in the template. So this sounds like a cond with 3 cases. One is there are some seconds left. The other is there's minutes but no seconds left. And the third case is there are 0 minutes and 0 seconds left. So those are our 3 cases. So I'll do the easiest one first. So as long as the clock seconds is greater than 0, then all I have to do is make a clock with the same number of minutes and the same mode, and just subtract 1 from the seconds. So clock min C, and then subtract 1 from clock second C, and then leave the mode as it was. In the second case, where the seconds are at 0, but there has to be at least 1 minute left, so in this case, clock min is greater than C, and we AND that with the clock seconds equaling 0. Well, if it's 25 minutes, it goes to 24:59. If it's 10 minutes, it goes to 9 minutes, 59 seconds, and so on. So we're going to make a clock where we take the clock min and we're going to subtract 1 from it. And then what happens with seconds when that happens is the seconds become 59, and then we leave the mode alone, and that's it.
So in these first 2 cases, all we basically had to do is subtract 1 second from the time. But what happens when both of the minutes and seconds are at 0? Well, then we need to change the start time. It has to become either focus or break mode, whatever it wasn't before. And that is a domain shift, so we're going to have to use a helper. So if we AND together the clock minutes being equal to 0 with clock sec being 0, then when we make the minutes, rather when we make the clock and that first selector minutes, we're going to need a helper function. We'll call it set start time. It takes a clock. Whenever we restart, the seconds are always at 0. And the mode has to change. So what we'll do is we'll put not in front of clock mode C, and that will make it the opposite of what it was before.
So I'll clean up my scratch work remaining from the template, and it's time to complete the wish list for the set start time function. It consumes a clock and produces a natural, either the number is 5 or 25. The purpose is produces break start minutes if the mode is true, because it switches to that, and otherwise it produces the focus start minutes. Go ahead and mark it as a wish list with the 3 bangs, and the stub would be set start minutes of any clock, and we'll say that the answer is 0. We'll go ahead and run it, and I forgot to comment out the 3 exclamation points. I also forgot to run it after the previous function. Apparently everything is okay there. Previous function is basically done, assuming we get done with set start time, then next clock should be done. So our first check expect, if we have a clock that's at 0, 0 and its mode of true, we want it to produce the break start minutes. And likewise, if we have if we make a clock which is 0 minutes, 0 seconds, and false, we're going to want it to produce the focus start minutes. Run that. It's well formed.
So now I need to comment out the stub and label it as a stub. And we'll be using the template from clock once again. And I'll go up and copy the template and paste it down below. I'll need to rename it to set start time. And then in this function, the only part of the template we really need to use is clock mode. Because if clock mode is true, that means it's switching at this point to the break mode. And if it's false, that means it will switch to the focus mode. So that sounds like an if. So we do if clock mode C. That's the question. And the answer, if it's true, if it's switching from the focus mode, then we're going to do the break start time. And if we're switching, if it's false, then we're going to go to the focus time start minutes. And all 7 tests pass. Meaning that set start time works, but because it was the helper function to next clock is functioning now also. So now we'll do the examples for render clock. Of course, clock, it consumes a clock and produces an image. And the purpose is to render the clock. So we'll do check expect of something in focus mode. We'll make a clock with 24 minutes and 30 seconds remaining true. And what we're expecting is to place an image. And we'll do text of the label itself, focus label constant, font size constant, and the focus font color. And we'll have it placed in the proper position for the label, label X position, label Y position. And then we need to place the clock in the place image of the clock in the right place. I could just do quote 24:30 here, but I'm elaborating on the example, which will help me create the function. So I do the place image as text. I do string append. The minutes I have to convert with number to string, then the colon and quotes as part of the string append. And then I'll need to do another number to string for the number of seconds. And then the text requires font size, focus font color, and the place image requires the position, so we do the constants time x position and time y position. And we put the whole thing on the empty canvas, the MTS. And we run it, and I put an equal sign in the check expect instead of a dash. And number to string is number has a right caret, not just a dash there. And all those dashes. And everything appears to be well formed. That was sort of hard, so I'm going to just copy this previous one and just pretty much convert it to something that's in the break mode. I'll make it 4 minutes. Obviously false is the break mode, and pretty much every place where I put focus, I'll change that to break in the constants. So it's text, break label, font size, break font cover, then the X and Y position. And then I do the clock, and again I do the clock in the break font color.
But what happens if it's 24 minutes and 3 seconds rather than 30? You don't do 24:3. You do, convention says we do 24:03. So in that instance, and you'll see in the string append, I'm just putting quote 0 for 24:03. I run that, and everything is well formed. And I made a mistake there. It should have been an image as the result of the stub, not a clock. So I replaced C with MTS. So I comment out the stub, and we'll be using the template from clock once again, the compound. And we get the template and paste it down below and rename it to render. Now if you look at the examples and you think about render, we're basically asking render to do 3 separate tasks. One to produce the clock, one to produce the label, and the third is to place it in the right place. So this sounds like we need some helper functions. So the first one I'll wish for is render label, and I'll wrap it inside a place image in label X position and label Y position. And then once again, wrapped up inside place image, I'll wish for another function, and it'll be render clock, and it's going to be in time X position and time Y position. And it's all placed on the MTS. So let's complete the wish list. The render clock renders the minutes and seconds in the appropriate color. It consumes a clock and produces an image. Do bang, bang, bang to show that it's part of a wish list. And our stub is define render clock C, and we'll just put any image in there. MTS will do. And let's do our second wish list, which is render label. It consumes a clock and produces an image in the signature. It renders the appropriate label in the correct color. Bang, bang, bang. And our stub is define render label. Again, it consumes a clock, and MTS is a good image for the stub. We run it, and everything is well formed. So we'll do the check expects for render clock. And first we'll have it make clock 24 minutes 30 seconds in the true mode. And we're not worrying about the place image, that's taken care of by the previous function. So we just do text, string append, number to string 24, and then we append also the colon and quotes, and then we append number to string 30 for the seconds. Again, I could have put that all in one string, but I'm elaborating, and that will help me come up with a function. And then, as completing the text, we do font size and focus font color. And once again, I'll copy that over, changing it to false and making it 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And then pretty much I just have to change focus font color to break font color. And everything is well formed. And once again, we'll get the template from the clock and comment out the stub. You rename the template. And for render clock, again, we start with text, do a string append as a way of elaborating on the example. We do number to string of the clock minutes, and we add a colon. But here's something we have to wish for. It's zero padding. Do we add that zero in or not? We're going to use zero padding, we just wished for it, to put it in there when we need it and to leave it out when we don't. Then we do number string clock seconds as part of the string append. And then to complete the text, we need the font size. And we need another wish list because we need to set the proper font color. And again, that's a domain shift. So both figuring out whether to add a second and to what the color is, we need helpers for both of those. And I got to clean up my parentheses a little bit. And now let's complete the wish list. For the zero padding function, it consumes a clock and produces a string, and the purpose is it produces quote 0 if the seconds are less than 10, and otherwise it produces an empty string. It's a wish list, and the stub defines zero padding. It takes a clock, and we'll just have it produce an empty string. And the other item on the wish list is set font color, and it produces focus font color if the clock mode is true, and otherwise it produces the break font color. It's a wish list, and our stub is to define set font color. It takes a clock, so C produces a string. I'll make it green, and everything appears to be well formed. So we'll do the check expects for zero padding. And basically we just need to check for whether it has a 2-digit number of seconds or a 1-digit. So we'll make a clock with 10 seconds. And in the case of 10 seconds, you don't need that 0 padding between the colon and the number of seconds. And the second check expect we'll do is 0 padding, make clock 19 and true. And in that case, you do need the padding, so you'll have to have a quote 0 string. And everything is well formed when we run it. And the template, once again, is from clock. So I need to get the template from up above for clock once again and paste it in. And rename the template and comment out the stub. And then for 0 padding, the only element in the template that I need to pay attention to are the number of seconds, because if it's less than 10 it needs padding, and if it's more than 10 it doesn't. So that's an if. And basically, if clock seconds is less than 10, we put in the string 0, and the false answer is an empty string. And now I'll do the check expects for the set font color. And in this case, I'll make a clock that's true. Doesn't matter what the minutes and seconds are on it. And it's going to produce the focus font color. And if we do another set font color, make clock 11 false, it'll produce the break font color. And I probably should have run things when I completed the previous helper section. And we'll bring down the template from the clock once more. And rename the template, comment out the stub. And to set the font color, the only thing the function needs to test for is the mode. So the question is whether or not clock mode C is true. And the true answer is focus font color. And the false answer is break font color. And I'll run that, and still have test failing, but it's all well formed. And here's the check expect for the render label function. I'll do render label. It takes a clock. So I will make a clock 24, 30, and true in the focus mode. I expect it to produce a text of the constant focus label in the constant font size, in the constant focus font color. And then I'll copy it and then just change it so that the mode is false. And I'll change it to 4 minutes since That mode never gets up higher than 5 minutes, and every place where it says break, or rather focus, I'll change that to break. And I run it, and everything is well formed. So we're going to get the template from the clock. And rename the template.
Now, render label is another function that we're expecting too many things from. We're expecting it to render the proper label, and we're expecting it to render it in the appropriate color. So we basically dispose of the template. We wish for a function called setLabel, which will give us whether it spells out focus or break, and then we wish for another function called setFontColor, which will put it in, which will make it the appropriate color. So now we have to do our wish list. So this one produces, or rather it consumes a clock and produces a string, and it'll produce focus label if the clock mode is true, and otherwise it's going to produce the break label. And bang, bang, bang to show that it's a wish list, and then the stub would be define set label. It takes C for the clock, and it produces, well, just have it produce an empty string. And the check expect, basically we just need to do two tests and have one true and one false. So we're doing make clock 1 true. The next one will be make clock 1 false. And in the case of the true, this one, we have it come up with a focus label. And in the case of make clock 1 false, we'll have it come up with a break label as our example. And everything appears to be well formed. Once again, we get the template from clock. Paste it in, rename the template, and comment out the stub. And in the case of setting the label, the only thing we need to look at is the clock mode. So we have an if, and then when that comes out to be true, our answer is the focus label, and when it comes out to be false, it's the break label. That's it. All 20 tests pass.
So to clear things up about what just happened for you and for me, this chart basically shows we started out with the render function, but we broke that into, we had two helpers, render clock and render label, and we simply used render to put those two things onto the MPS. Render clock needed two helpers that needed zero padding to add the zero and set font color. And render label needed two helpers, one to set the appropriate label, and the other one, which was already written previously, is to set the font color. When I put that in, I said we needed to wish for it, but it had already been written. I didn't need to plan any of this out in advance. It's just that the design method we use made this almost inevitable.
I have one more function, and I need to go up to the world functions, and I'm going to have rename on key as handle key because I want to be able to switch between the two clock modes by just pressing the spacebar. So when it comes to the signature, I just copied that from above. It takes a clock, a key event, and it returns a clock. And the purpose of it is it changes the mode between the focus mode and the break mode when you press the spacebar. Bang, 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 wish list, but it won't be a wish list for long. And it'll be find handle key. We'll give it a C for the clock, KE for key event, and we'll have it produce C. That's the clock. Now we need to do the examples. So we do check, expect, handle key, and we give it a clock and a key event. So we have make clock 1, 1, and true. And what we're going to want it to, well, if it takes a space bar, then we want it to change modes. So it starts over at the break clock starting point. Remember that currently is for 5 minutes. It starts at the break clock 0 for 0 seconds, and it changes the mode to false. Now basically do the exact same thing again with handle key make clock 1, 1 true, but this time instead of a space bar we'll try an X. This is a large enumeration. I don't have to check every possible combination of letters, so if I check X, now at this point nothing should change. Let's do another check expect, this time to make sure that it can switch from the false to the true mode. So we do handle key make clock 1, 1 false with a space bar, and in that case we should be able to make a clock that will change the mode, this time starting out at the focus start minutes, number of minutes, of course 0 seconds again, and switching to the true mode. And let's do one test where we don't hit the handle key properly. So we do handle key make clock 1, 1 false, and we show it pressing an X, and then there should be no changes. It should simply be make clock 1, 1 false. And I see a mistake in the second check expect. That false should be true because it shouldn't have changed because we pressed the X, and everything is well formed. So this is the only function that does not come from clock. It comes from key event as in the world program guide, and that is the template. And I'll rename everything that is WS for world state to C for clock. So after the dots, in both cases it's C. So we have the first cond, and when we have a space bar, it's going to change modes, and it's going to restart. So we'll do make clock, and we already have a helper function that we came up with earlier called set start time. That's for the number of minutes. 0 is the number of seconds, and to change the mode, we just take the mode and put not in front of clock mode C, and that's all we have to do there. And then what happens if it's not a space bar? We just return C, and that's it. We run it, all 24 tests pass. Forgot one thing, the on-tick handler is very, very fast, so if I put a 1 after next clock up there, it'll tick it about once per second. So then I'll run it again, all 24 tests still pass. Now I'm going to simulate a clock that the focus clock with only 5 seconds left, so you can see it change. So I do main make clock 05 true. There it's running 4, 3, 2, 1, and if it works, it switches over to the break clock in blue and starts at 5 minutes. I'll close that one. Now I'll simulate the break clock running with just a few seconds left. So I'll do 0, 5, and false. And when I run that, it should count down to 0 and then switch over to the focus clock. And so it's working properly. And then that last function I put in there, when you press the space bar, which I just did, it changes modes. When I press the space bar again, it changes modes again. To those of you who have watched this far, thank you and congratulations. This design method breaks the programming process into small, well-chosen pieces, and in a way, that's what the Pomodoro technique does with your time. Thank you again.